Welcome to another episode of Medicine Mondays. Yours truly, Dr. Barry Pierre, and today we are bringing medicine and politics right into the new year. I talk about this a lot, that as a physician, you don't have the leeway to be like, politics doesn't matter, I'm only focused on medicine. Like maybe 20, 30 years ago, you could probably get away with that level of an excuse. But as we continue to see just how much politics affects how I practice on a day-to-day basis, the idea that you can just ignore it, act like it's not important, act like it doesn't affect you and your patients is gone. That's out of here. In the year 2025, we're going to be doing a lot of talking about politics, I assume, because I have to have a discussion today about someone who is dubbed the Disinformation Dozen, right? He was a part of the largest crowd of disinformation during the pandemic, to the point where they said, you know what? We're going to choose 12 characters, right, who we think are responsible for over 50%, and it's actually more, of misinformation during this pandemic, and he was one of them. And now he has been selected to be chosen as our Secretary for Health and Human Services. Yes, I am talking about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I'm going to be talking about why this is not a risky choice. No, this is a dangerous choice based off what he said, right? Based off the lack of his qualifications. And hopefully at the end of this episode, you'll understand where I'm coming from, right? Because I already know there's going to be people saying, hey, you know what? He wants to take away, artificial flavoring and make our food safer. Yes, sounds great. But unfortunately, that's not going to be the only department he's in charge of. So I, as a public health professional, as a physician, have to be strongly concerned that he's going to be a part of decision making that will affect how we practice medicine and, more importantly, practice public health. So first and foremost, before I get into the nitty-gritty of the conversation, I just want to tell you about 5 things that he said. Now, I actually have a list of about 20 of these debunked claims from RFK. If you want them, I will put a link to the show notes to get them. I'm just going to drop 5 of them here. You can kind of see, hey, is this the person we want heading our health and human services? So number 1, regarding vaccines and autism, Kennedy Jr. has perpetuated the debunked theory that vaccine cause autism. Now, again, if this is your first time catching, Medicine Mondays or Lunch Learn with Dr. Barry, this is something that we have refuted time and time again. But unfortunately, because of the way misinformation and, more importantly, disinformation works, it continues to be peddled, especially by people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who continues to peddle this lie. And again, it sows distrust amongst just the populate, and more importantly, is responsible for a lot of what we now see as measles outbreaks, right? Just misinformation, right? So for people who think misinformation is, like there's no harm, no foul, that is not the case. We are having measles outbreaks for a disease that we essentially eradicated because people assume that a vaccine causes autism. That is a problem, right? And that's just number 1. Number 2, in regards to COVID-19, and he said a lot. Remember, he's a part of the Disinformation Dozen. We talked about quite a few. I think one of our more popular videos and episodes was Dr. Rashid Buttar, Disinformation Dozen. He actually, rest in peace, he passed away, but he was responsible for a ton of lies. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is right up there with him. He falsely asserted that COVID-19 vaccines are the deadliest ever made, misinterpreting data from the vaccine adverse event reporting system. In regards to Plaquenil and ivermectin, he promoted the use of these drugs, even though we have studies after studies that have shown that these drugs are ineffective in regards to COVID-19 and COVID-19 protection, in regards to misrepresentation of vaccine-related deaths. And this is a thing that he's not the only person that does it, but obviously he's one of the most famous people that does it. You're getting to the point now where people are passing away, and you have, just check the comments, you're going to have some idiot comment that like, oh, did he get vaccinated? In regards to Aaron passing away, he was perpetuating the fact that, oh, I think he got vaccinated and I think the vaccine killed him, right? Just lies on top of lies. And just another one claimed that the vaccine was made from components such as mercury and aborted fetal tissue. Ladies and gentlemen, This is the person who they now want to head Health and Human Services. If just those 5 claims, and again, if you want those 5 claims, I'll put a link in the show notes. Just those 5 things alone, if that's not enough for you to say, hey, you know what? I probably don't want you heading the department that's associated with vaccinations, vaccination information. I probably don't want you heading that department if this is your mindset. Would I be wrong? Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, that I don't want a person who feels this way about the safety of a vaccine, right? Who feels this way, who has no problem lying about it. Let me know in the comments if you think that that's a person that should actually be heading the department associated with vaccine immunizations here in this country. And you actually think that you're going to have a positive result from it. And I could be wrong. Please let me know. So this is kind of the start. This is where the foundation of my argument of why he should be nowhere near this department. I think it just is what it is. It's one of those things where I just want us to put our common sense hat on. This is a person who should not be heading this department if we don't want to suffer another public health disaster. So again, the problem that I have, especially as a healthcare professional, and again, I have a master's in public health as well. I got 2 different hats. Both my hats disagree that this guy should be in this position. 2 different hats. And here you have a person who is not only responsible for a significant amount of misinformation that led to people dying, that led to measles outbreaks. Again, don't believe me, I'll put the links in the show notes. But now you have a person who has these thoughts and now can be in charge of the messaging that goes out to the people. Right here on Medicine Mondays or Lunch and Learn, you guys listen or watch me because you understand that the message that I'm going to provide is not going to be an opinion base. It's going to be based on facts. It's going to be based on scientific evidence and reason. But if you have a person who their foundation is not based on facts, is not based on reason, one thing you can't do is you can't even argue with them, right? Have you ever tried to argue with someone whose opinion, like whose whole foundation was based on their own opinion, right? It's a lose-lose situation. It is a dead end proposition because they're not going to change their position. Why? Because if they change their position, their whole foundation is crumbled. And yes, I understand for those who may be, a fan of his, right? So those who may be a supporter of his, like the good things he does. Like I understand, especially from an environmental perspective, right? I understand his importance in like just the discussion of like, hey, why are there foods here in this country that we can eat, right? That you can't eat in other countries? Why are there ingredients here in this country that can be put in our foods that you can't put in foods outside of the country? I'm here with you. In fact, we did an episode on that. I'll put that in the show notes as well, right? So I'm right there with you as far as like, and I think we did one where I think we listed like the 10 different foods that you can eat or that are banned in this country, right? So I'm with you here. Put him in charge of that. Whatever that food, like FDA, like let him put his hands over there. But now when you're getting into my realm, where when I'm trying to educate my patient why vaccines are important, why immunizations are important, why they have to follow, the recommendations of a governing body like the CDC, and you have a person here who has already sown a level of distrust with the CDC, which again is kind of twofold, right? I'll talk about that in a second. Like this is a person that I can't have run the show because that trust and that communication and the barrier of communication is going to be even stronger, right? One of the issues now just in medicine, or especially when we saw it during the pandemic, was that there were trust issues and bridges that needed to be built in regards to communication from, the government and the general people that just weren't there. So now when like a worldwide thing happens, aka a pandemic happens, there are people who are like, you know what? I don't really trust y'all. I don't really trust the information. So I'm not going to follow your directions. And a lot of people died for it. A lot of people are not here today to listen to this episode because they listened to misinformation during the pandemic. That's just fact. And I won't argue, right? Which I think COVID is one of these weird conversations where people will argue against the treatment, but not argue against the actual disease, right? I had a person who was arguing the fact that, oh my God, can you believe, in 2020, there's been a decrease in life expectancy and all these other health related issues happen. And the article was literally centered on the vaccine. No mention of the actual disease that caused a pandemic that happened during that same time frame. It was focused on the vaccine. So if you have that type of mindset that you're willing to skip over the disease process and say, no, all of the bad things that happened during the pandemic was from the treatment and not the disease, we can't really have, real meaningful conversations. So when I say yes, like, I can see why you can be a supporter of an RFK, because you see some of the positives. We also have to deal with the negatives, and those negatives will far outweigh any fight against artificial ingredients and whatever things he wants to do. Like, they will far outweigh that. Whatever positive he may get from an environmental perspective will be crushed by any of the health related, especially, again, and I'm just assuming, right? I'm just assuming he's going to go in just like he is when he did not have the position. And he's going to talk just like he did when he didn't have the position. Maybe, right? Maybe there's going to be some smart people around the circle to say, hey, RFK, yeah, that was cute that you were saying all that stuff about vaccines, even though you are vaccinated. That was cute that you said that stuff, but like, let the experts kind of handle this, right? Like, I'm hoping that happens. But again, I can't and I will not risk my patience in the community, especially lunch and learn community, everyone who watches and follows me. I can't risk like you thinking that everything is cool without me not saying anything. Like, that just would not be me. So understand, yes, I understand there's some bridges, that have been burnt down in regards to health information and communication and trust. But trust me, this person is not the guy who you want leading, bridge building festivities back again. That is not the case whatsoever. That is the problem. And when I think about it, we have to understand just how important a position like the head of Health and Human Services is. Again, I don't want people to downplay it and think it's just another position that was given, that was promised to him by President Trump, right? He's like, oh, yeah, go ahead, take that, right? No, these are positions that qualified people need to be in because of the ramifications are so great, right? Like, I want to kind of focus on this, right? The role of Health and Human Services Secretary is crucial. It involves policy making, but leading with evidence-based healthcare strategies. Evidence-based healthcare strategies. I talked about this earlier. This is the same person who believes that vaccines cause autism. That is not an evidence-based health strategy. He's responsible for measles outbreaks. That is not evidence-based. Measles, a disease that was essentially eradicated, is back. I know you're not familiar with it. In fact, we haven't had to talk about it for a while, but this is what measles are, and this is how dangerous they can be because of misinformation. Let's not shoo the fact that his position would have significant detrimental effects to your life and your child's life and everyone after the fact, right? Like, again, and regardless of how long he's in this position, it is extremely important for us not to downplay how serious it is, right? Another thing I want to talk about. The role requires someone who uploads scientific consensus essential in maintaining national health standards. Think about that. There's a person who, again, yes, we understand the environmental aspect of it and the food, like, yeah, I understand that. But there's a scientific foundation that needs to be upheld. And if he is not, and clearly, when you get labeled a part of the Disinformation Dozen, clearly you've already shown from history. I'm just going off history. I know some people may think I'm ragging on them or I don't like them, right? No, I'm just going based off the information you have given me. If you weren't so bad, you wouldn't get listed as a part of the 12 people responsible for the majority amount of information, right? Just think about that. 12 people in this country were labeled as the Disinformation Dozen. He is one of them. Is this a person who you think is going to uphold scientific consensus? Again, if I'm wrong, let me know in the chat. Someone drop that comment and say, nah, Dr. Pierre, you are wrong. This is why. Because I want to know where you're getting your source from. More importantly, where you're building that level of trust from, because I don't got it, right? Second, the secretary must inspire public trust. Must inspire public trust. Again, we already have an issue where people don't trust the government for various reasons, right? No, I don't want a person who peddles in misinformation and disinformation to be at the head of that, right? I think that would make common sense to me. And we want to ensure that this person should have a track record of supporting public health consistent with scientific consensus. And this is not something that this guy provides, y'all, right? It's just not in his, what we say, DNA. It's not in his DNA to have a level of trust. It's not in his DNA to have his information founded on scientific evidence and truth. It's just not in him. So when I say, yeah, this guy needs to be far away from that position there, like, this is the reason why. Like I said, if you want to have a conversation on, his thoughts on environmental protections and artificial foods and all, like, yeah, I'm ready. I'd love to have a conversation. I think it's important. But if we're going to have a conversation where we're talking about scientific evidence and vaccine safety and immunization protocols and health related initiatives in general, not just obviously we talking about vaccines, but just in general, which he would be a part of, like, nah, this is not the guy, right? And as a healthcare professional, as a physician, as a public health official, I can't have that, right? I can't sit by, I don't got a choice, right? I can't sit by willingly allowing this to occur and someone in the lunch learn community thinking, oh, you know what? Dr. Pierre didn't say anything about RFK. He must be okay with it. Like, I just want this video to serve that I am not okay with this guy in that position whatsoever. Hopefully this video serves that. And I think a thing, especially with RFK and the people who support him, is that they will convince themselves that because he's an advocate of things, right? Like, hey, I want my children to eat better. I want, vaccines to be safe. Like, because you're an advocate of things does not mean that what you're advocating is true, or more importantly, you're doing it with any level of foundation of expertise, right? Like, there's a lot of things I can advocate for, but if I don't understand, all right, how does this go from point A to point Z, right? Like, I should not be sitting here in front of you acting like I'm the foremost expert. And time again, RFK has put his foot in his mouth. Just download, the 20 debunked claims. I stopped at 20. I could have went a lot further. Understand, like, no, he has continued to put his foot in his mouth, right? And continue to get himself in trouble. He has had to be debunked repeatedly over and over and over again because he just, like, yeah, you're an advocate, but you're not telling truth. You're not telling facts. In medicine and health, like, if you are not talking in facts, if you're not talking in truth, people will die. Again, there are people who are not here to listen to this episode because they passed away due to misinformation because of the likes of people like RFK. And I will not sit by willingly and allow this to occur without saying something, without being demonstrative, without posting, and I'm going to keep on doing it, right? Like, I was telling a friend of mine, one of the benefits of having an administration like President Joe Biden's administration was that I didn't necessarily have to worry that the administration was going to put someone in a position that did not know what they were talking about or was going to spread false information that I would have to combat. So even during the height of the pandemic, where if you follow me on TikTok, my Instagram, like, it was just video after video that I was having to combat mistruth after mistruth. I had to do it because the guy, who's back again, right? Like, he peddled in mistruths. He peddled in lies. So for me, it was kind of like, especially if you follow me, it was a kind of a light year for me. Cause, like, hey, guess what? I don't have to fight mistruths as much anymore. But guess what I have to do now? Starting in 2025, I already see that I'm going to be pretty busy fighting mistruth after mistruth because I think they're just going to be stacking on top of each other, especially when it comes in my ballpark. Truth that happened in law and all those other things there, I'll leave it up to those content creators. But here, when you start peddling mistruths in the healthcare space, I got to talk about it, right? So it's going to be extremely important for us not to fall in love with the fact that he's vocal about, his advocacy efforts and what he wants. Because just because you're vocal does not mean you are truthful. Sorry, to conclude this episode, right, I just want to say this. His intentions, right? His intentions may be good, right? I'm not saying that this guy is a bad person. His intentions may be good for what he wants to do, like, especially in regards to environment and food, and like, it may be health, like, it may be good, but good is not good enough. You have to have good intention based off evidence. And time again, RFK has shown us that he does not base his intentions off evidence. He only bases it off his opinion and thought. And as a healthcare professional, I will not allow, like, his opinion and thought to be made as this gold standard. Like, it is what it is. Like, it's not going to happen. Not here, right? So I'm hoping, right? This started a new year. I'm hoping to say that, hey, you know what? I'm not going to have to worry too much. Like, they're not going to lie. But I just understand the way reality works. And I understand that you're probably going to see way more videos like this here on Medicine Mondays or the Real Physician Reacts. Definitely something you should check out as well, too. That's our live stream, because you can ask me questions live when we have a topic of discussion. I understand that that's going to come to play. So understanding that, like, I hope that, again, you can kind of follow the journey and understand that you're going to have to get your information from multiple sources, like mine and like some others, but definitely because the people who may be in charge, right, of in these governmental positions, they don't have incentive to tell the truth. And I hate to say it, but it just is what it is, right? So again, I'm yours truly, Dr. Barry Pierre, bringing you a good spirited discussion on politics and medicine, and unfortunately having to talk about, RFK and why he's such a bad choice for a head of health and human services. See you guys next week.